Today for our yoga pose breakdown, since we've already worked through Warrior 1 and Warrior 2, I believe it makes sense to go on to Warrior 3. So we will do that today. A Warrior 3 is a balance pose. It is also a strengthening pose with some stretching thrown in there. So it's kind of the whole package deal. We will walk through the pose, taking it kind of step by step there at first, and then we'll talk a little bit about your intention for your practice that day and how that might affect how you come into the pose or how you perform the pose that day. So to begin, we'll check in with our posture here in our standing pose, making sure we're pressing nice and evenly through both of our feet, finding that micro bend in our knees, making sure that we're not hyperextending anything. And finding those hip points at the front of our body. This might be one of the more important cues to pay attention to while you're in Warrior 3. The goal of Warrior 3 is to keep those hip points, your hips squared towards the mat here. And a way to help yourself do that is to find those hip points at the front here and then just turn them in towards each other, that little tiny bit there. Just attempting to turn them in towards each other. That will help keep stability through that lower back here and help keep that core engaged as you're moving through this practice and help you keep those hips squared towards the mat. So keeping those hip points in towards each other. The next kind of goal here will be to keep that back foot flexed with those back toes flexed towards the mat as well. So begin working through the pose here. I like to start with my hips on my waist, and then we'll bring a foot, any foot behind us, keeping the toes planted on the mat. You can see my toes there. Keeping those toes planted on the mat as we begin. And then the chest will come forward here. So we've got a nice straight line from the crown of our head to that back heel. Now, unless you're practicing with mirrors around you, which I don't necessarily always recommend for people to do, you might not be able to tell for sure whether or not you've got that nice straight line from the crown of the head to that heel, and that's okay. We just do our best. We feel our body in this pose, we set our intention to do so, and then just do our best and accept what happens. So, trying to keep that nice straight line from the crown of our head to that back heel. We'll take an inhale in, and as we exhale, our chest comes forward as that back heel lifts up, keeping that nice straight line. And keeping those hips squared to the mat here, turning those hip points in towards each other, those back toes flexed towards the mat. In order to keep the integrity of the hips and those toes, we might notice maybe we don't go as far into it as in our mind we feel that we should. Maybe if we start bringing our chest down, we notice that our leg isn't going up. So I would invite you to just keep that chest up so it can stay nice and in line there. And only going as far as we're comfortable, getting a stretch through the back of that standing leg here, strengthening that standing leg. And then once we found some stability, we can begin bringing our arms up, overhead biceps to ears. We can even maybe come into our goalpost arms or keep our hands on our waist. Whatever feels best for us in that moment. And then we'll come out of it. And that is our Warrior 3. So things to think about really with any balancing pose. I would invite you to think about your intention for that day. If your intention in your Warrior 3 or any balance pose is to really work on that strengthening of that standing leg and to work on your balance, I would invite you to find where you do feel the most stable, where you feel that you can hold that pose for the time that you are holding it, whether that's 3 breaths, 4 breaths, whether you have a teacher leading you or you're doing your at-home practice. Making sure that you can hold it for that whole time so you're getting that nice, good strengthening and you're working on that balance, even if that means you keep those toes planted on the mat here. This is a Warrior 3 and it's a beautiful Warrior 3. If this is where you're feeling the most stable, staying here is perfectly wonderful. If you find yourself pushing yourself maybe further than your balance is really willing to go that day and you're finding you're always falling out of the pose, if you spend half of your time falling out of the pose and getting back into it, then you're not spending as much time as you could building that strength and balance, if that makes sense. Now, if your intention for the day is you just want to have kind of a silly moment and you want to get into the pose as far as you can and then you're falling out of it and you're maybe laughing at yourself a little bit in a good way and just being kind of silly with it, that is perfectly fine as well. If that is your intention, laughter definitely has a place in yoga and it's such a great thing to do, and laughing just makes us happy. So I invite you to do that safely. Maybe if you are going to be doing that, pushing yourself in your balance a little bit, making sure you have a wall close by so your falls are just kind of little tips out of the pose as opposed to a tumble or anything that could be bad. So that is all I have to say on the Warrior 3 and balancing and whatnot. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.